CNN's Shermichael Singleton pulled up to the Wolfpack den, and things got real.
We were not immigrants. We had no sovereignty to any other place.
We talking reparations, immigration, FBI shakeups, how the Democrats lost black men, and yeah, guns, baby.
I know a lot of bros who are starting to get into competitive shooting now, like they're really enriching their knowledge about guns. That's not new to us.
The full unfiltered 110-minute conversation is live for members right now. Skip cable news watered down takes. Hit jointimblack.com. Grab early access and sharpen iron with me and Shermichael Singleton. Not ready yet? Hit the like, subscribe, and watch clips drop all week. I'll see you there, Johnson. Let me first say, man, and we're recording, by the way, Shermichael, man.
Oh, okay. And by the way, Tim, I will not use profanity on the show, so don't worry.
It doesn't matter. It's YouTube, baby. It's anything goes on YouTube, man. Yeah. And if I need to, I'll I'll bell it or something if I have to. But I don't expect you to get like, you ain't Mike Epps. You know what I'm saying? I know you.
Man, Tim, bro, let me tell you, man, I have my moments. My moments where I want to say certain things. And because I'm so used to being on TV, I'm like, damn, I can't really say how I'm really feeling. So maybe I'll be able to say how I really feel. What they say it from the chest. Now I can say it from the chest.
Please do, Shermichael, man. I feel it would be an honor, brother, that you express yourself fully, man. But hey, look, man, I'm not trying to get run out of here on the rail by my people.
Yeah.
So I need to start big for the Wolfpack audience. That's my people that dive right in. What do you stand on? Lineage-based reparations for Black American descendants of chattel slavery. If you support it, why? And if you don't, what are some other remedies that you see are equipped to help us with the wealth and justice gaps we're still living with?
Yeah, I mean, look, the disparities are pretty clear. You don't need me to highlight this, and I think any Black person, from the most educated to one who doesn't have an advanced degree, but maybe just a baseline high school diploma, understands that there have been some serious ills and injustices done. The country made a promise. This isn't Shermichael Singleton's opinion. This isn't Tim Black's opinion. This is documented. We made a promise to the people who were ultimately freed. We reneged on that promise. We really did. We said, all right, we're going to give you land and we're going to do all of these things. And the idea behind it was to give autonomy to these people to build upon, right? To create wealth, to create some level of sustainability, to pass on. That was the idea in part behind the 50 acres and a mule, although it was a bit more nuanced than that. We ultimately decided not to. Abraham Lincoln being assassinated, that just, pretty much hell froze over at that point. However, I got to tell you, Tim, and this is just me being realistic with the audience as a political person, I don't think it's going to happen. I just politically, I don't think that there is any appetite. And I'm not even talking about, some people may say, oh, it's because Republicans or this or that. I don't think Democrats would even support any type of economic reform, reprisal to the ills that were done to our ancestors. So then the next question for me becomes, if you look at the state of Black people in the country today, particularly those who live in inner cities, terrible crime, the fatherless family issues that exist, the poor quality of education that exists, the health disparities that exist, how do we address those issues in the modern context? Because from my perspective as a conservative, addressing those issues is a net benefit to the entire country. I'll tell you what I mean. If you have a more healthier population, that's less people who are going to be relying on Medicaid, right? They're going to live longer. They're not going to be a strain there. If you talk about having a more educated population among our group, then what you're seeing is individuals who are more likely, more culpable to be contributing citizens to not only their communities, but the country. You think about this from an economic baseline. If more people are able to participate in the exchange of currency and commerce, that is an absolute net benefit to the economic advantages of the country writ large. So maybe you don't like Black people, if that is your perspective. But hell, I believe you like money. And the reality is the larger number of people we have participating in the pool of commerce is a net benefit to everybody. So then my question politically becomes, how do you legislate? Because I don't think we're going to see any type of dividends paid out for the lies that the country reneged on 200 years ago, I suppose, give or take. So then the question becomes, in a modern sense, how do you address this? How do you say, if we can help those who are disadvantaged, who happen to be Black Americans, if we can help them succeed economically, if we can help them achieve academically, if we can help them in terms of their health, it is a net gain, not just to them, but to the overall country. And even if you are one in the pocket of people who don't particularly care for these people, you too financially will benefit, right? Because there are going to be less taxes for policing, less taxes for building more prisons. I mean, Tim, I can go down the line to connect how, if we as a community can see an increase in our ability to do well across the board in terms of metrics, that it benefits everybody else, whether it's directly or indirectly. Right. So I say, okay, let's look at education. Now, we've given some money to HBCUs. I'll acknowledge that. Could we potentially give more money? And then the question becomes, well, how do you offset the cost? Because if you're going to appropriate funds for something, you got to figure out a way to pay for it. My argument would be legislatively to fellow Republicans who may say, Shermichael, I get it, but I don't agree with this, or I don't know how I would articulate this to my voters back at home. I would say you're being taxed X amount of dollars every year, right? Or every quarter that compiles into a year. What percent of the taxes per capita is going towards policing, towards crime, towards paying for social safety nets, because there's a larger volume of people that are relying upon these programs? What percent of taxes is going towards those things? And could we offset those taxes by saying, well, we're going to give a little bit more to maybe historically Black colleges and universities, or we're going to give a little bit more to prioritize how we give out loans to small business owners, because we recognize if you grow and expand entrepreneurship and you grow it in such a way that leads to sustainability, not just giving out the money, because that's just not enough. You can give out the money. That doesn't mean the person is going to succeed. You got to have the knowledge to be able to do that. So we're going to have a sustainable track, right? That we can track. Okay, we're going to give out support here, and we're going to help make sure this business can survive and strive. If you can connect those dots and say, we're giving to all of these negative things now, but imagine if we redirect for the positive things, what the long-term impact will be. I personally think for most people, if you can connect that dot, then they'll say, you know, this makes a lot of sense. If we pay now, we will reap dividends and benefits longer term, not just for them, but for everybody. That kind of makes sense to me, Tim. So that's sort of where I fall on the issue.
And you know what? And I get that. You know, I'm a realist, and I recognize the uphill battle that reparations would be. My thing is, for that to actually come to fruition, right? You know, of course, ultimately, but formerly in another life, I was a progressive, right? And then
I know,
and then Shermichael, you know what I'm saying? I believed in things then that were crazy. Like they were, well, not crazy, but let's just say the obstacles in order to get these things done, like Medicare for all, for instance. These things were very difficult. Getting money out of politics, like overturning, the whole
United and
Business United, right. You know, we said these things when I was in that group, and hey, man, they had just as much a snowball's hell and chance in hell as anything else. I mean, going up against big pharmaceuticals, I know Biden say we finally beat Medicare. No, he didn't. He didn't. But so I still see that there are other policies, like if Westmore, my governor here in Maryland, he's got a program where people say HBCUs. I also want to look at like school programs, like he's got training programs, trades.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well, Tim. I mean, so let me just add some more specificity here.
Yeah, it gives us some more rounded picture of what they're doing.
Any way we can redirect funds in such a way that will yield to a benefit to an individual, meaning they're less likely to commit a crime, they're less likely to be reliant upon government or a local municipality or the state, meaning they're relying upon taxpayers because it's tax dollars that afford for these programs. If you can somehow create an environment that leads an individual to a more productive outcome, that is always going to be more favorable. And so I set HBCUs as an example, But it doesn't have to just be colleges. I mean, it could be trade, electricians. We're going to need people, all of these. You're going to need people who have at least a baseline understanding of coding, electrical work, etc. I actually think we need to focus on reshoring some level of manufacturing as it pertains to rare earth minerals. 70% of that, which I know we'll probably get into at some point here, but 70% of rare earth minerals are imported from China. I would like to see like a rare imports initiative similar to the National Highway Initiative that we had during Eisenhower, where we said, well, look, we're going to refine these minerals domestically within the United States. I think you could probably do that in about 15 years in terms of building it. I think if you cut the red tape, expedite a couple programs, you probably could do it in about 8 to 10 years. So that will save us a little bit of time. But imagine the level of manufacturing that you would have outpacing some of the jobs that are going away in the service industry, right? And so I'm constantly trying to ask myself, as it pertains to Black people in general, knowing what our current predicament is, knowing that we were promised something, it didn't occur, it is what it is, man. Like, I can't go backwards, but what I can do creatively is try to figure out, well, how do we move forward? And how do I advocate for programs that I think could probably realistically pass, that I can numerically say as a net benefit and gain to the country, that I could directly say this would benefit the most Black people who would be interested in being participants in said programs. And if I can have a causal direct effect linking all of those things to a benefit, then to me, Tim, that's a damn good job that I'm advocating for said things. And I think sometimes we get so lost in what should have been, we don't focus a lot on, well, what can we do now? What could be, right? And that's something that I try to focus a lot on, just knowing the legislative complexities and the dynamics of politics today. It is what it is in the past. But if I can say, if we do X, Y, and Z things today, this will be the benefit in 10 to 15 years. This will benefit all of us, not just this one particular group. If enough people can say, Shermichael, I see where you're going with this. I may not agree with every little nuanced detail, but you're on the right damn track. Let's all come together and figure out what this legislatively would look like. It's a win, man. It's not just a win for us. It's a win for the country. And in politics, I think if other people can see a win attached to your victory, you're more likely to see success with what you're advocating for, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And just add to that, I look at it like everything that I believe in, everything that I'm willing to advocate for, doesn't necessarily have to be an easy road. And I don't have to necessarily be locked into one idea, right? So I can support reparations, but also support what you're talking about regarding investment in those communities in other ways. And finding more.
Tim, and let me just say, I'm not saying that in an ideal world, if we actually could pass some form of a reparation and it was monetary, sure, I would absolutely be open to advocating for something like that if I knew it could pass. If I knew that financially, we could even afford it. That's a whole nother dynamic. The cost of, because of so much time that has elapsed, what the cost today would be on what was promised. Like, I just think about all of those things, and I just say to myself, realistically, this ain't gonna come, my man. And so then my question again becomes, if I want to see the vast majority of people in our community, particularly those at the bottom end, succeed, what can I advocate for to help lift them up? Like, that to me is always my fundamental question. What can I advocate for that I know can get support that will give reprieve for what these people are experiencing, meaning people in our community who are at the bottom ring of the ladder that nobody's focusing on, including the damn Democratic Party. Nobody, Republicans or Democrats, are focused on. If I could figure that out and get enough people on both sides to say, okay, this is something that I'm willing to support, that to me is success. And again, I think that's just more realistic, Tim, than the reparations. I just don't see it, man. I don't see the support there. And again, maybe that will change in the future, but as things currently stand, I don't see it. So again, my mind goes back to, what can you advocate for? What can pass the legislative muster test? And how do you make sure whatever that thing is leads to the greatest number of people in our community moving upwards economically? Because if we have economic security, everything else sort of rises with that.
Absolutely. So much.
Well, that's the way I see it, bro. I know some people might say, Shermichael, well, that's just not good enough. And I get it. trust me, I get it. I'm not saying that I don't understand
Right.
it.
Right.
I'm just operating in the reality. And sometimes reality isn't what I want. It's not what Tim wants. It's not what hell everybody who's going to be watching this clip wants. It sucks as like hell sometimes. I get it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to figure out how to navigate the game based on the rules that currently exist. And that's just the way I see it.
Well, you know, one of the things that kind of led me away from the progressives were the immigration issues that we've been dealing with, right? And what happened under Joe Biden, right? So I want to move on to that point, because I got a clip here. We're talking immigration and black workers, and we'll get into the slave analogies and the misguided thought process. That check out this video. Let me get you on the other side.
Fam. Is when Joe Biden got elected, he said he wanted. Bottom line is when Joe Biden got elected, he said he wanted to fast track 4 million undocumented residents to full citizenship. Black people completely ignored it. I spoke on it. I said, do you know why he want to fast track 4 million? Because he know he's not going to do nothing for us. We ain't going to be motivated to vote for him November. So what he's going to do is have these migrants already set up with citizenship so they can replace the black vote that he loses. The migrants are here for 3 reasons. Replace us at the polls, replace us at the low-end industry jobs, right? See, when Donald Trump said during the debate that Joe Biden is taking black jobs and giving them to migrants, he was correct. When people say, what do you mean by black jobs? Get out your bougie feelings and deal with the reality. They are mostly what? Essential workers, warehouse, trucking, security. And a lot of those jobs are going to who? The migrants.
Yeah.
How's that ring with you? What do you think about what Dr. Umar was saying there, Shermichael?
I think Umar was correct. I mean, you know, I remember debating this on CNN. I don't know if it was this year, maybe it was last year when the election was still ongoing, when Biden was still in the race. And I remember looking up the statistics because I had another show the day before where someone said, oh, you're just making this up. They're not taking anybody's jobs. And I said, you're misunderstanding my point. At the time, and this is probably true today, and your audience could look this up, the Department of Labor, when you look at what they classify as lower skilled jobs, Dr. Umar said essential, they classified as lower skilled jobs. The Department of Labor said that when you look at the stats, ethnicity wise, based on ethnicity, I should say, excuse me, African Americans are the largest individuals who do those sorts of jobs. Again, they call it low skill. Dr. Umar referred to it as essential. Behind African Americans are Latinos, and then I think maybe whites, and then Asians, something, and it goes on and on. But the reality is, again, most of those low skilled or essential jobs, depending on your classification, we do consume the vast majority of those jobs.
Right.
Even and I cited this on CNN this year, actually, or last year maybe. And someone from CNN, a Democrat, said to me that I guess I basically wasn't black because I had cited a treatise that Kamala Harris's father wrote in the early 1990s. Now, people aren't aware of Dr. Harris. He's a renowned economist. Now, I don't particularly agree with all of his economic positions and theories. He is more of the left in terms of his economic disposition, but a brilliant man nevertheless, and I would never take that away from him. At the time, he wrote in this treatise, it's not very long, a couple of pages, early 90s, that his concern with mass immigration, legal or illegal, was that you were going to increase competition among black workers for a certain subset of jobs. And he was correct. He was 100% correct. And so when you allow a lot of those people to come in, we don't have unlimited resources. We don't have unlimited jobs. Those people are going to have to compete against someone for something. And they're more likely going to compete against us first before they move up the ladder to compete against others. Yeah. And so why would I, and you don't have to agree with all of my politics. I'm okay with that, Tim. I'm used to that. But why would I, as a conservative black man, advocate for a policy economically that has the long-term effect of pushing out black people, particularly black men, for work? I would never advocate for that. Now, some people can say, well, those black people should just go get education and then go get the white collar jobs and go work in C-suite, et cetera. Right. I'd like to see more black people do those jobs as well. But the reality is the bulk of people in our community do not hold those positions. And so the positions that we do hold should absolutely be protected. And I don't understand why anybody would advocate for anything otherwise. It just seems nonsensical to me, and is a bit ridiculous to me to say, let's keep letting people in legally or otherwise, and not thinking about who are they competing for jobs with in terms of housing, where they're going to live. We got a housing shortage, whether it's renting or buying. Who are they more than likely going to compete with for those houses? When you look at schools, most of the times our children are in schools that are already overpopulated as it pertains to pupil to teacher ratio, already not written with the best technology, updated school materials. Now you're going to populate those classrooms with even more people who most of the times don't even speak the language. So now that's putting a further stress. I mean, I can go down the line of connecting how this is negative towards us. So for me, I don't support this. And I'll just give you an example. Even with the South African issue, and I tweeted about this on X, and boy, I piss off a lot of my conservative friends. And my point, and I told someone, I said, I don't care that they're white. I don't, that's not my point. They could be from Sweden or London, and I love London. London's a great place with an incredible history. That's not the point. The point is, when you're bringing people into the country, they're going to compete against somebody for something. And whether it's 54 of them, as in the case of these Afrikaners,
right,
or hundreds of thousands or millions, as in the case of people coming across the border to the South, this valuing one American worker and one American family is enough for me to say no. We've had 4 years of millions of people coming into the country. We have to correct that. We have a housing shortage that we haven't accounted for yet. We still really haven't figured out our employment issues and how do we get more Black people to be more skilled to make more money. I mean, to make more money. We haven't addressed that yet. And not just Black people, they're poor whites as well. I don't want to forget them, because oftentimes I think we forget, just because we have a shade difference, that we're kind of really in the same boat. And sometimes you got to remind people of that, Tim, that we have some shared realities here, right?
Absolutely.
And so why in the world would I advocate for anything that's going to devalue the work of our people who are Americans for some cheap ass labor from south of the border, or hell, anywhere else in the country? I'm not for that. And some people are going to disagree with me. It's not about being xenophobic. It's not about being against anybody. It is about recognizing that we have resources aren't finite. Jobs aren't finite. And we got to prioritize our own people first for those jobs. And people say, well, Americans don't want to work those jobs. I'm from the South. Go to the South, man. Go to any small town in the South, and you'll see the number of Black people who work in those chicken coops or any other manufacturing plant.
Hospitality, what have you.
I can go on the line. So this notion that, Americans don't want to work, that's not true.
No.
People say that who've never been to a small town, and you will see a whole lot of Black people working those jobs, young and unfortunately even older. And so again, I'm not going to advocate for something that's going to make it more difficult for those people to earn a living that hell is already hard enough for them to earn. That is just ludicrous to me. And so Dr. Umar is 100% correct. They're going to compete against somebody, and somebody more than likely is going to be us. And again, it's not about being against anybody. I recognize the importance of having some level of migration. I economically understand that, right? But that should be tied uniquely to a certain number, and it should be tied uniquely to certain sectors where we don't have enough of our own people to fill those jobs. But, and there's a caveat to that, Tim, the priority should be making sure to shoring up our own people for those jobs first. And then you numerically say, well, where else do we have deficits? Okay, now we need to bring in migrants to fill those deficits, whether it's low skilled or essential work or technology or whatever the case may be. But we have assured our people first that we have exhausted every attempt to make sure that they're skilled for the jobs. Then we go and bring in other people. That to me is just the way we do this. But I'm not going to advocate for bringing in other people to compete against any American, especially people in our community, because we need those jobs.
Well, two things, Shermichael. One is when you said, what is it that possesses people to be of the mind that we should have that competition, or that we would pit Americans against people that would come in and work for lower wages? And I tell you, like, first thing, I think what it is just looking back at myself, I think it was the idea of the virtue signaling that was going on at the time. You know, it was we owe it to these people. These people have hard lives and they're in a bad situation, and we want to help everybody. And I think sometimes people get caught up in taking care of their neighbors and people that aren't their neighbors in the hopes of we're a Christian Judeo country. The people, black people, come. We know what struggle is historically in this country, and I think some of us have a predisposition to be of that mind. I don't. Some of us do, man. They're like, Lord,
Tim, I get it, but
yeah,
I don't. Our situation is more unique than anybody else's in this country.
So that's the first thing, though. But that's the first thing. That's the first thing that pops in my mind is as I try to I'm talking to people that are Democrats, trying to get them to realize that we need to become independent. I'm not telling them to be Republicans, but I'm saying look over at Republicans, though, and make a decision based on policy about what's best for you and your family. Don't just automatically run towards the Democratic Party. So a part of that is I got to uncouple them and make them realize, like they say when you're on the airplane, they say put your mask on first, right?
Yeah.
Before you put the mask. And so we got people that are locked in, Shermichael, into this idea that they want to put other people's masks on. Nah, man. Like no one should expect that of anyone. And the other thing is when you brought up Trump in the 54 Afrikaners, I almost wish you just said, Shermichael, look, I owe Elon. Look, Elon, these are Elon's friends.
That's fair too, Tim. You know what? That's fair too. I said, look, Elon's my boy. He asked me to do this. There's no reason for me to do this, but I'm gonna help my guy out. And you know what? People may not like it, but hell, Tim, to the point you're making, this happens in politics all the time.
Right.
All the time.
Right. And look, and I can take that. But to me, an immigrant is an immigrant is an immigrant. I don't care what color they are. The same people that say we shouldn't be hung up on race are the same people saying that they're white though. So that's why you're doing. Nah, man, I'm against it because he has to give me a reason why we should do it.
Immigration needs to uniquely be tied to some type of advancement for the country. That point blank period is not, yes, we're benevolent people. Yeah, we welcome people in. And look, we set a pool, right? We set a pool of people. Say, all right, we're going to bring in X number or every year, every couple of years, whatever. I'm good with that. But this idea that we got to be the world's charity because we're a benevolent nation, I fundamentally disagree with. Now, I am for helping people correct the ills of their country because that benefits us. They have a loyalty to the United States. That's a new trading partner. Maybe they have some unique skills that will benefit our economy. That makes sense to me to see it that way. But to just keep bringing in people because, Venezuela, they're having issues or whatever country's having issues. We're better off helping the people clean up the messes there, helping them build a striving society and say, now, whatever you produce, we're going to be the number one trading partner. That's how we really benefit.
That's Michael. What about the people what about folks that say, what's happening with the immigrants is similar to what happened with black people with slavery and with Jim Crow? I know you pushed back on that, not mentioning any names, but your position on that was pretty solid. Could you expand on how you see that any type of framing that black people, are predisposed to this, and so we don't want to create another second-class citizenship. And look what we did to black people. This type of looking back is that I think that the liberals are kind of using that as a talking point.
I think it's insulting. I think it's insulting. Our ancestors had no homeland to return to. They did not put on their shoes or sandals or whatever and decided that they're going to walk miles or hell swim across the Atlantic to come to the United States. This was not a choice. The people who come in here, whether it's for political reasons, personal reasons, or because they're trying to escape persecution, it's fundamentally their choice. And so when people bring that up, it really, really angers me because, again, and some people say, oh, well, you're a black conservative and now all of a sudden you want to care about black people. Yeah, maybe a conservative, but I'm very in sync with my history as a black person. And whether you agree with my politics or not, I am certainly going to stand firm in anyone insulting the uniqueness of the Black American experience. This was born out of an unparalleled moral crisis. You're talking about, a century plus of enslavement,
Right.
and laws that were essentially still akin to enslavement of African people on American soil. And then we essentially refused to even recognize them as citizens after the 13th Amendment was passed to ban slavery. We were not immigrants. We had no sovereignty to any other place. We were born here. Hell, we helped build the place. The economic engine that fueled the growth of the United States, that being cotton, was produced and toiled on the backs of our ancestors. We didn't come across a border. We're born here.
I wish more Black Americans,
we were owed something that these people are not owed. And so it is a slap in the face and a complete insult when people try to compare the uniqueness of chattel slavery to people who decided to illegally come across the border. The two are that's an odious comparison. The two are not the same.
Man, I wish that more Black Americans would see that we have something to be proud of. Like this, we helped build this country, and we should not just walk away from it. And that is sort of
We're not guests. We did not cross a border. We were born here.
Right.
We labored here, and we're still denied rights. Again, people, do not let anyone try to draw that comparison to illegal immigrants and the Black experience. There is nothing like the Black experience to any immigrant that has come into this country. None. You don't believe me? Study the history. There aren't a lot of people, and I am going to acknowledge this, with the exception of what the Nazis did in terms of experiments on Jewish people.
Right.
There isn't any other, and I'm not trying to compare them to us. I'm just making a point in terms of an example. There's no other group that was experimented on, that was subjugated as subhuman. I mean, I can go down the list. And so when someone says that illegal immigrants are similar to us, you should absolutely reject that nonsense. It's not even close.
Yeah. It's just laziness. I don't know, man. I find it very insulting as well, brother. And I appreciate you. And I want people to know.
It just angers me, Tim. It angers me, and I get so passionate about this. Growing up in the South, my great grandmother lived well into her mid 90s, and I remember as a boy, all the way up to being a young man, talking to her every day until about 3 years ago when she passed, and just always wanting to gain more and more about just our family's history and her uniqueness growing up in the South. And when you understand the crux of those things, and that's why when people say, oh, we're going backwards, I sometimes reject that, because I actually had someone who went through that, and I've listened to those stories. And when I look at the examples that I have as a young Black man, the opportunities, I should say, that I have as a young Black man, I can't even fathom experiencing what my great grandmother, even my grandmother, who was one of the first to segregate her school in the South, or high school, I can't fathom that. So to me, every opportunity I have, I'm like, holy smoke, my people went through they bear the brunt force of all of this, so I could be on TV, so I can have a company, so that I can, raise capital for my entrepreneurial pursuits. And I want to be an example for more Black people, particularly young Black men. And I really touch on young Black men because I think our problems are just so unique. As a man, I want to serve as an example of what is possible with the right investment, with the right mentorship, with the right belief that they can be something more than what we see on a television screen or on social media. And so again, don't let people compare the experience of our people to the illegal immigrant or modern immigrant, because it's just not even close, man. It's not close.
Man, well said, Shermichael. Well said. And just so that, for a little insight into how I see it and how I think a number of my viewers see it, as long as when you're talking about Black folks, you're going us and we, and you're not going they, them, we good, right? Because there's some people with a knack of, we could differ on policies. That's cool. But when you start otherizing Black people, it's like, these Black, those people, and that's crazy to me.
No, it's all of us, man. Like you're in Maryland. I don't know if you know this guy called Mark Chapa. Do you know Mark Chapa? Mark Manley. He does the firearm stuff with a lot of young brothers and young sisters too, but mostly younger guys in the Baltimore area. A really, really good friend of mine. And Mark, you look at Mark, he has the tats all over his arms and all over his feet. He's he looks like a rough kind of guy, but the kindest guy in the world, married, beautiful family. And I don't see myself any different from my bro Mark just because I'm on CNN and I wear a nice expensive suit. I personally don't see the difference. And people probably would even be surprised if they were to see Mark that, oh yeah, we hang out, we go shooting together. He and his wife come to the house and have dinner with me and my wife, and we're legitimate friends. And I have a lot of friends like that, particularly being from New Orleans. And again, I don't see a separation from the opportunities that I have been blessed and grateful to have come my way. And also that I had a good foundation to instill in me to take advantage of those opportunities. Some people didn't.
Yeah.
And that goes into training and education and a whole 9 yards. So maybe opportunities did come the ways of some people in our community, but they didn't have the knowledge to know I should probably take this. And so that's a whole nother fundamental problem that I think a lot about, of how do I address this? Because I want them to know when something, hey, you should jump on this because this might not come again. Or, hey, you got an opportunity here. Let's make sure you have the knowledge and the wherewithal to take advantage of it. A lot of people in our community don't have that knowledge. And so just because I was lucky enough to have the right family and the family and the foundation to say, hey, you got to do this, you got to take advantage of this to put me on the right trajectory, it doesn't make me any better than people like my bro Mark or anybody else. And when Mark and I talk on the phone, he'll often say, Sherm, this is what I always appreciate about you, bro. You never look at anybody in our community any different because of where you are. There is no degree of separation. Now, I might get pissed off sometimes and say, Mark, these younger brothers got to make some better choices here. That irritates the hell out of me. I'm going to be honest, because I see the potential. And so it's a frustration because I care more than a frustration because I'm somehow embarrassed or because I think I'm on a pedestal. Right. But again, Tim, there is no degree of separation for me. And so when I see people comment on my social media and they're like, oh, you don't think you're black, or you don't think that to me is real bullshit. If I'm going to be honest with you.
It is.
And it does frustrate me, man, sometimes, because there are some people who are conservative on our end who probably really don't care.
Right.
I'm not one of those people.
And you got to keep doing this type of shit, Shermichael. Keep doing this type of shit so people understand what kind of brother you are, what kind of man you are, and where you stand fundamentally on these types of issues, and let you express yourself. Because you on CNN, man, you within the guardrails of what the program is, whatever the talking points, whatever's being discussed. It's just So yeah, this type of format affords you that opportunity, man. And I did watch your channel. I
appreciate you for it, man.
Yeah, I saw you talking about China, and you were presenting some ideas that I think Black Americans need to take heed to, because we got kids, man, and we want them to have a bright future. But can I move to Kash Patel, because I know you supported.
Yeah, that's fine.
I know you supported that, brother. So look, guys, check this out. This Kash Patel, the new FBI director. I want to ask Shermichael about some things about the FBI and how he feels about it.
3,000 cases against violent
well, that's not my question. We know that you...
Well, you asked if I was weaponizing the FBI, and I am not. I'm giving you the hard, concrete examples of the men and women putting handcuffs on bad people, doing harm to our children and innocent Americans. I do not see weaponization.
You have placed on leave FBI employees responsible for the investigation of January 6th. That sounds political to me.
I have not placed anyone on leave who has not violated their ethical obligation or their oath to the Constitution.
So if they were investigating January 6th, you believe they were violating an ethical obligation?
Nope. I think the common theme here is you putting words in my mouth, and I'm not going to tolerate it, nor will the men and women of the FBI.
Well, you did place on leave an analyst responsible for investigating Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. Is that politicization? Is that retribution?
No, not if she broke the law or the ethical guidelines. I don't know which case you're talking about, but that's the standard. And we will hold ourselves inwardly accountable. And we,
it's just with him, with Kash Patel, man, it seems like he's going to be it seems like he has different ethics, the way that he looks at the way that the FBI moves. And I know some Black Americans who are conscious, they still remember an FBI that did some things that were notoriously bad to the Black community. So why do you support Kash Patel? And do you think that it's going to be a new day in the FBI?
I mean, I hope it's a day that returns some level of transparency. I think that's important. I think no one can deny that the FBI needs to be radically reformed. And you talked about, I was just making a list of things that I could just remember. Let's talk about the FBI and looking into investigating illegally wiretapping Dr. King. The same thing with Malcolm X. Yeah. Look at what they did to the Black Panthers. They even wiretapped Aretha Franklin, believe it or not. Now, some people may say, well, all right, Shermichael, that happened 40 years, 50 years ago. I don't know what people's thoughts are on the BLM movement. I have my views on it. I support the idea, but I don't think the way it was actualized in terms of an operation, I think people just did a lot of really crappy shit with the money that was raised, and that was really screwed up to me. I think it was less about trying to improve the conditions of Black people and more about filling the pockets of a certain number of Black people, but that's a different conversation. With that said, the FBI recently, and this is just a couple years ago, we're talking about modern, we're even looking into different activists at the local level who were engaged with BLM activities. And so this idea from the senator, they're like, oh, well, you know, you guys are trying to defend January 6th. Look, I'm not a fan of what happened on January 6th at all. That shit was not okay, man. But to pretend that the FBI hasn't been weaponized against people in the country, whether it was 40, 50 years ago or just a few years ago, it's like, where the hell were you at? Were you like sleeping under a bridge? Right. Were you in a coma for the past 5, 6 decades? Of course, they have a history of weaponizing their powers against certain vulnerable people or political opponents that they did not like. In our case, it happened to be vulnerable and political in cases of Dr. King, Malcolm X, and BLM, and also the Black Panthers. But you got to reform this thing, man. Like I'm personally very skeptical, Tim, of any federal agency. I'm very skeptical of prosecutors. Like I think federal prosecutors, local prosecutors have way too much discretion, way too much power. I think they overcharge people, and they typically overcharge vulnerable people because you don't have enough money to really fight them and their unlimited flow of cash to put your ass behind bail. So oftentimes you get a defense attorney that you don't have to pay for, who's just trying to strike a deal because he or she is overburdened with the number of cases that they have. So I have a real critique about our justice system in general. It hasn't worked, doesn't really work unless you're rich and powerful. And even if you're rich and powerful of color, that's going to get you a little, you know, you'll get a little bit of leeway, but even that has its limitations. And so I support cash because I personally support the idea of taking a wrecking ball to reforming the FBI. Because in my opinion, while the FBI has done some good things in terms of preventing domestic terrorist attacks, you know, they work with the Secret Service in terms of money laundering and trying to get, you know, gangs out of here and fentanyl, et cetera. There are some good things. I'm not going to deny that. But there is a corruption and a stench of corruption that has lingered for a long time that nobody can deny. And so anytime someone's going to go in and say, hey, we're going to shake this whole thing up, doesn't mean I got to agree with everything they're going to do or everything they advocate for. But if they're going to do that, that to me is a step in the right direction, because I just don't trust any of these federal agencies. And I don't think anybody in our community really should. And maybe that's a radical of opinion, but that's the way I feel about it. And I've said this on CNN many times to the dismay of a lot of my Democratic friends. Even when Cash was appointed, I remember being on, I'm not going to say the host, but I remember being on the show and the host really pushed back against me on this. And I said, well, I said, it's easy for you to say that, but the history of your perspective is not the history of my perspective. Right. And so if anybody says that they're going to take a wrecking ball to reforming this place, I'm absolutely going to support that, because all the people who said that they were going to have these glorious reforms, if that were true, then why just a couple of years ago they were investigating local advocates who were BLM folks just you know, trying to organize. Right. And and you know what? It's not adding up there. So so that's why I support him, Tim. And again, people may dislike it, but you sometimes, man, sometimes you have to radically reform something to make it better. Sometimes you have to make it clear to people who have been so used to holding power and doing whatever they want, like, to anybody, particularly people with no power. If somebody's going to go and shake that up, then I'm cool with that. Now, I will say this: there's a caveat that I have. Now, just because I support them shaking it up doesn't mean I support them getting into power and then usurping that same power against us either. So I want you to shake it up and I want you to have reforms, but I don't want you to go and do the same thing that the other people were doing. And I want to be clear about that. Yeah, I agree with that too. Cash Patel, and that goes for a lot of Trump's appointments, man. Like, I'm for shaking it up, man. Things could be better. They got to be better. And if you got to have people that want to be radically make some changes. You can't keep doing the same exact thing that we've been doing. And as it comes to the FBI, it's not just BLM. It was also Standing Rock. I was an advocate for Standing Rock back with no DAPL.
And they did the same thing there. There was a lot of stuff going on with that, where searches and seizures, political labeling, data-driven threat assessments, informant manipulation, entrapments. They always implanting somebody at events, and you thinking, you know, and some of that, I know that senator wasn't talking about it, but there was a lot of that going on January 6th too. Like people that
of
were
course she wasn't talking about it. of course she wasn't talking about it, because obviously her political focus is on January 6th, and I understand why, but my point is, let's not be hypocrites here. Well, let's not pretend that this is a serendipitous moment in terms of the FBI utilizing their powers in ways that a lot of people would probably say is rather abhorrent. But people certainly conveniently forget or overlook those things when it serves their political purpose. Well, my thing is, if you know the history of the FBI as it pertains to the Black community and our experience specifically, then you wouldn't support it. That's just the way I feel. And again, that's not to say that there aren't good agents. I just laid out a few moments ago the good things that they do. Right. And we certainly want to empower the FBI to continue to do those good things, because that's in the interest of every damn body. But you cannot deny that whether it's the FBI or local DAs or federal prosecutors, these people hold unique and immense amount of power. And it is oftentimes directed towards us in some very unfair and unscrupulous ways. And that has to be reformed and changed. So if you got to take a bull to the China shop approach to it, and that's going to lead to some change, then hey, I'm all for that.
You know what's crazy about it, Shermichael, is, as you pointed out earlier, when it comes to immigration, and it seems like a lot of Black Americans were supporting, just like basically open the doors open, and, you know, bring Biden, bring in the people, and we need to help everybody. The same thing holds true with the FBI, man. I sat and watched progressives, Black folks that wanted to be progressives, who were just buddying up to the FBI because they thought it was going to help them stop Trump or something. I don't know what it was. I was like, when did we start trusting the FBI? Now, this was under the, under a different administration. It wasn't Trump, it was Biden. But I remember people were like, well, FBI is good. They were like rooting for the FBI. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I know there's something going on. I don't know, maybe a mind control, is something in the,
now, look, I root for them to do their core job, prevent domestic terrorist attacks, to get cartels out of here, work with Secret Service on money laundering schemes, white collar crime. I support them to do that.
Right.
And that's where that's where I draw the line. I don't support them doing all the things that, like you talked about, Standard Rock or any of the other litany of things we just talked about. I don't support that. And I think most people in our community wouldn't support that. And I think if you were to talk to regular Black people, and not the people here in DC who lived in their bougie bubbles, people who have to really think about real shit and how real things impact them, or people who are close to them, when you talk to those people, you're going to get a very different opinion. And that happens to be the majority of people in our community, not the people who I interact with on TV.
Right. And I know this is getting played out with the barbershops, but go to a barbershop or go to a little league game or go to a cookout.
Man, go to the gun range, man. A lot of bros are getting into firearms now. A lot of sisters are getting into firearms now, wanting to protect ourselves. We have a really unique and amazing and beautiful history of gun ownership in this country, in part to sort of protect ourselves immediately after slavery and during Jim Crow. And a lot of Black people are starting to return to that. I know a lot of bros who are starting to get into competitive shooting now, like they're really enriching their knowledge about guns. A lot of bros, I got a couple guys I know now who live in Georgia and Texas who are getting into hunting now. That's not new to us. We knew land better than anybody else in this country. But once we started moving up north, we sort of left those skills behind because there wasn't a need for it anymore. Now you see a lot of us sort of returning to those things. So you don't got to just go to the barbershop. Go to the car meet. Go to the bike meet. A lot of us are riding our motorcycles. I'm a big motorcycle guy. Go hunting. You will find us in all of these different spaces. And those are just regular Black people living their lives, trying to take care of their families, trying to be contributing members to their communities and to the country writ large. And I think sometimes you see a certain type of, I shouldn't say a certain type. Let me rephrase that. You see a Black person of a certain economic caliber, and people just presume that that's representative of everybody in our community. And if that's just numerically not the case, that's a very, 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 very tiny percent of us. That's not the vast majority of us. And you go talk to the vast majority of us, and then you really get perspective on how Black people are thinking about a lot of things. I mean, Tim, I can't tell you, I was just at Target yesterday with my wife and my daughter. We were going to, because my daughter's 4 months now. She's already trying to walk. So we're buying one of the little walker things. You put them in to walk in or whatever.
Yeah.
And this brother came up to me. He was with his wife and his kids. And he was like, bro, I just wanted to tell you, I know people might give you a lot of shit, but we support you. And he was like, and his wife, she's like, I don't always agree with you. She said, but I got to be honest, you do say a lot of things that makes sense to us. And then she's like, I'm not gonna lie, my husband loves you. I don't always agree, but you do make a lot of sense. And I get that encounter and encounters like that so often, man. You wouldn't believe it if you look at some of the comments I get on social media. And so that, that kind of makes me feel good, because then it's like, I really am in sync with what I think at least a good number of people in our community are feeling and experiencing. And I spend a lot of my time around regular people. I mean, yeah, I do well. I got a company that's doing really well financially, but I don't spend most of my time around journalists. I have no interest in that. I'm hanging with my bros. And yeah, some of my bros are doing well. And some of my bros are just like regular, just working their asses off, trying to just be good, not get themselves in any damn trouble.
Right.
And we all commingle together. And that's just, that's my core group, man. And I was talking to one of my buddies. My buddy Shay lives down in Georgia, and Shay's a Morehouse brother of mine. And we were talking about some of our bros, because we got a trip coming up for my birthday. We're going out of the country, and we're talking about if we're going to bring the wives and all that stuff. And I think we're going to bring all the wives and girlfriends and stuff. And two of the guys, they can't quite make it because they just, regular jobs kind of thing. And he was like, bro, so-and-so can't make it. And I was like, damn, I really want them to come. I was like, just tell them, say whatever they can. And the rest of us can just, put our shit together and just make sure the guys that come on the trip. And so I'm saying that point to say my friends are not just one particular type of group. And you probably would think that's the case if you see me on TV. And I ain't gonna lie, I can understand how people would probably assume that. But no, man, I hang out with brothers who sort of cross the spectrum. Some of us are doing well, some are in the middle, and some of us are like, when I talk to him like, Sherm, man, I'm trying to do the best I can to stay out of trouble. But I'm doing cool. It's important for me personally to just not lose touch with that side of my identity, that side of our community. That's just important to me. And so, I'm not hanging out with journalists. I'm not hanging out with, I just don't, and I don't like to hang out with those kind of people. If I'm being honest with you, I don't go to political events. It's rare that I go to any events. And if I do go to something, most of the times people are like, oh, wow, I'm surprised you even came. And my wife would tell you this, Tim, I might stay for 30 damn minutes. And I'm like, all right, we got to go. I don't want to be here, because these are just not the kind of people I enjoy being around, man. So, Tim, I say all that to say, I think it's important when people are on TV and we're talking about issues that are of importance to our community, that we have an objective outlook, but we're also in touch with how people are experiencing and seeing things on the ground. And that doesn't mean, Tim, that there aren't some positions that I'm going to have economically that I'm like, all right, this is really more so in my interest. I kind of do want this. And people can challenge me on that. And I'm open to having that debate. But I also still try to maintain, well, what is also going to be in the best interest of trying to uplift everybody. And that's important, man. It's really important to me, because I always imagine if TV goes away and, business falls and crumbles, my hope is that I can still go back to the community and say, well, look, I tried to do some extraordinary things that didn't quite work out, but I hope at least the community will still support me. And my hope is that that support will still be there. And it's important to me to have that support. I don't look for the support or pat on the back for other people. I say what I say because it's what I believe. Sometimes people agree with it. Sometimes they don't agree with it. But again, I still try to, at the core, advocate for things that are going to be in our best interest. And so, to the initial question on the FBI, my support for cash, that's why I support it, because the agency has a history of being antagonistic to us. And I'm not going to go on TV like some black people who happen to be Democrats say, well, he's abhorrent because it's tied to Trump, and just dismiss and whitewash all the horrible things that this agency has done, not only in the past, but recently.
And if Cash doesn't do what Cash says Cash is going to do, we hold him accountable like we would anybody else.
Hold him accountable. Call him out, because nobody is above reproach. Like I'm not one of these conservatives. Well, my party's in charge, so I got to go along with everything. I'm gonna say, look, I wouldn't do this way. There's a better way to do this. If you're trying to accomplish an aim, this shouldn't be the way you go about it. I mean, you think about China. You mentioned China. I've said on CNN for months now that Donald Trump's critique of the problem of free trade was spot on. When you go back to NAFTA in the 90s, and then you have the USMCA, United States, Mexico, Canada agreement that Trump reformed when he got into office. The first time, I didn't support any of this. The idea of free trade was that, yes, some jobs will be outsourced outside of the country, but there will be new jobs. Everybody will benefit. That wasn't the case, Tim. And what you saw was a lot of Black people got into the middle class because of those manufacturing jobs. They were able to put their kids through school, buy their first homes as a result. You destroyed all of that. And the promise of better jobs for us was the service industry. Those aren't better jobs. Not a lot of people, not many that I know are able to buy houses with that salary, or put their children through school with those with that salary. Although some places have these, sort of college opportunity programs. Those are good, whatever. But that's not a good replacement. And so I still supported Trump and still supports Trump. The idea of like reshoring, bringing some jobs back. But I also said, I think the president shouldn't be reckless. The president got to be strategic in this. Like, we don't want to crash the entire stock market or the entire economy because we're trying to correct an ill from the past. There's a way to do this to yield positive results that's beneficial to the working class people in this country, particularly people in our community who, again, we saw manufacturing lead to a burgeoning Black middle class that was decimated by 1999 going into the 2000s as a result of NAFTA. Why would you not want to support someone trying to correct that? Doesn't mean you can't say I support it, but you need to do it better.
Well, how do you feel about the tariffs, man? You got time to talk about tariffs before you go?
Yeah. Look, again, Tim, to the point that I'm saying, you're not going to bring back everything. I acknowledge that. I understand business. I understand economics. That's just impossible. This idea of the halcyon days, that's over. We traded good paying jobs, 90,000, I believe, manufacturing plants closed down, hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs. We traded all of that for cheap ass goods. It is what it is. But then the question is, can you reshore certain components that we can build in the United States? Steel and aluminum. We should build that in the United States. We shouldn't get any of that from China. It's a small percent from China, but we shouldn't get any of that from them. Pharmaceuticals. Why in the heck are we importing so much of that from China, an adversary? We shouldn't rely on them for that. Again, rare earth minerals, lithium for our batteries, these smartphones that we love so much. For our missile technology capabilities, we need to refine rare earth minerals for that. For energy and production needs, we need rare earth minerals for that. Why would you rely on an adversary for that? Because if we ever got into a conflict for China, they put an embargo on all rare earth minerals that would literally cripple the United States. And so if you can bring back components of that so that the refining process is domestic with our partners such as Australia, Canada, the Democratic Republic of Congo, by the way, they have a ton of rare earth minerals in the Congo. And I think partnering with them will really bolster the Congolese economy, which I think would be good for the Congolese people. That's where my focus would be. And so I actually just did a show on the network, on my We the Free network that I co-own, where I did a whole script that I wrote out on what my 5-point plan would be on rare earth minerals. I'll just go over real quick. As you got to launch a national security strategy, secure allied supply chains, build industrial hubs, invest in innovation, and create a strategic reserve, just like we have a strategic petroleum reserve. I literally spent tons of hours researching, trying to calculate how could we do this legislatively, what the cost would potentially be, and what would the benefit be, not just to Americans, but also to Black Americans, because I want us to be a part of that opportunity in terms of businesses, small businesses, and jobs. So I absolutely agree with his critique, and I agree with tariffs strategically. And I agree if the president is going to do this and is going to yield something that we can bring back to the country. I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight. I said early on in the program, even my rare earths and mineral strategy would probably take about 7 to 10 years to build enough of those plants. But we used to build things in this country in about a decade, Tim. The national highway plan that we built under Eisenhower didn't happen in 2 years. Right. It was a plan, a strategy that we're going to commit to building this for the interest of our national security, but also to move commerce a lot quicker, to get people the jobs, et cetera, quicker. And the American people brought into that idea. Why can't we have a rare earths industrial base initiative today that benefits the country, but it would also benefit us because we saw our community decimated as a result of free trade. So that's the way I look at it.
Well, I think part of it is people need to accept that it is going to be a process. So check out this video. This video is a black small businesses and how they impacted. This is in Chicago.
Fueled by a dream, Bill Cooper started Inline Designs back in 1997. In the nearly 30 years since then, the furniture dealer who sells to municipalities, hospitals, and school districts has had to weather economic downturns, a recession, and a changing industry, and now says he's bracing for the impact of the Trump administration's tariffs that could put his small business out of business.
I think maybe what the tariffs are supposed to do is to bring some more revenue, but that's not necessarily what it's doing. It's really hurting a lot of people.
The latest iteration of the policy basically imposes tariffs on virtually every country the U.S. trades with. The Chicago business owner says he could be forced to raise his prices, but adds that if his buyers won't pay the increase, he's not sure he can survive if he has to eat the extra cost.
Like, for example, with this one customer, they said just take it off the quote for now. So that's money out of my pocket because they took it off the quote.
Some economists say tariffs will have a particularly negative impact on black households and small businesses in communities of color.
I think the risk is real.
But do not fear. That's the message from Pastor Raymond Thomas, co-founder and dean at the Joseph School of Business. While teaching practical business solutions in a faith-based environment, the Christian Business School has created its own partner network by trying to help insulate small businesses in black and brown neighborhoods from the tariff shock and economic uncertainty.
Because of our international presence, right, we now have opportunity to create platforms like we have what we call a global partner network, again, where we can develop relationships, again, in Nigeria and Tanzania and South Africa, where we can begin to look at other channels for supply and for distribution.
Despite best efforts to protect businesses from the economic uncertainty, business owners like Bill Cooper hate to think about what happens next if the tariff war continues.
I hadn't thought that far ahead, but if it does, it could be very devistating to everybody.
Yeah, so there are some concerns, and as your brother was pointing out, he's looking at the here and now, and this is how the impact is affecting us. But they got to have a long ways view.
Can I talk about that, Tim?
Please do.
So, well, first of all, I'm happy to see what Joseph Business School is doing with the global partnership. That matters, and I do think as a community we have a significant spending power. We always talk about buying black, supporting black. Well, these are the moments we really should do that. Number one, and I think that's important. But to Mr. Cooper's concern, I think it's a valid concern. And this has been one of my critiques of the president's plan, but I've also given him advice on how I think he could avoid this with my critique. I'm not just saying, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm saying, this is a problem. This is how you should address the problem. So we gave incentives to electric car manufacturers. We've also given other business incentives to businesses during economic downshift. Remember what happened with Obama during the financial crisis. The federal government came and provided incentives to those big businesses and to those investment houses so that they wouldn't go out of business or lose money, so that it wouldn't be a drag on the economy. The president with Congress could also provide those same protective barriers for small businesses, which, by the way, represents, I believe, a little over 50%, or employ, I should say, a little over 50% of all Americans. And so one of the suggestions that I actually mentioned this on CNN a couple of times, when I critiqued that this was a problem that the president had to be aware of, I said the president needs to work with the Republican-controlled Congress, and they're not doing a damn thing, in my opinion, unfortunately. He should work with them to say, look, we need to insulate our businesses as best we can because they are the backbone of our country. They're the foundation of our broad and expansive $16 trillion consumer economy. It's our small businesses. And so if you can insulate them from this for a year or two by having some incentives or some tax opportunities, then people like Mr. Bill Cooper would be okay. So Mr. Cooper can say, well, look, I can now go to SBA or whatever website and apply for some type of incentive because there's an additional cost that I'm going to have to be able to pass on to my customer. Is there some type of a grant or something that the government can pass that I can apply for, get access to those money so that I can continue to run my business? I can eat the cost because I got access to this grant money from the federal government. People might say that that's unrealistic, but it's not. We've given banks hundreds of billions of dollars, well, probably over $1 trillion to be exact, during the financial crisis. Why in the hell can't we do the same thing for small businesses, which are the backbone? So that would be my legislative approach to Mr. Bill Cooper, saying, well, Shermichael, I hear you about the long term, and I actually agree we got to fix it. But what about now? I don't want to go out of business. And I would say, Mr. Cooper, I don't want you to go out of business either. So let me get with Congress. Let us appropriate some money to give an incentive to make sure that there is a mechanism for you and other small business owners to apply for, get access to those grants. So if you got to eat that cost, you got the money to eat the cost, and that you can survive this thing for the next year or two. We can do that. We've done it for a whole bunch of other sectors. Why can't we do it for the backbone of the country, being small businesses?
Damn. Absolutely, man. Give us some rebates. Rebates to these families that are going, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we have the ability to do that.
Everybody else, bro. Yeah. Why not?
Absolutely, man. You know, if you're taxing what's in the Walmart shopping cart, you're taxing Black Americans. That's just how it works. And along with a lot of...
And guess what, Tim? You do that, we get out over this tariff conflict, which it appears we're probably going to get over it. I'm hoping sooner rather than later. Chinese talks appear to be going well. If we can get any type of an upside to this, it's a benefit. The market's going to benefit. Consumer confidence is going to return. Businesses actually do have capital. They can start creating more jobs. You saw this in some of the job numbers that came out recently. Yeah. They're just kind of nervous right now because they need certainty. So you do all of this, people are going to start spending again. They're going to start getting good jobs again. And so my advice to Trump on television has been, there's a way to do this, but we need to be quick with how we're doing this. And we need to have stability to the marketplace, because that stability to the marketplace is not only for our big businesses, but they're really, really fundamentally important for the smaller guys. And you do that, then you shore up your consumer base, being everyday Americans, and then we got a rocking and booming economy. This isn't that complicated. It's a little complicated, but not too complicated where we can't figure it out.
Yeah, as you stated, man, we had the economy. I think we had the economy that can shore up some situations as we go through this process. But we got to look down the road and say, we got to make the changes. We got to bring some manufacturing back to this country. I mean, I want my kids to have that opportunity to have a different America, the kind of America I grew up in the 80s, the late 80s, the early 90s.
And Tim, that doesn't mean, and let me just say this, because I hear this critique oftentimes. That doesn't mean, guys, we're talking about the same type of damn manufacturing that existed in the 60s, 70s, and 80s or beyond. I understand technology, the technological revolution has altered and changed what that looks like. But we're not at a place yet, Tim, where robots are building themselves. We're not at a place where robots can build their own semiconductors, their own chips. We're not at a place where machinery can refine their, rare earth minerals. All we got to do is drive. We're not at that place yet. And so until we get there, you're still going to need a human capital component. So why not do that here? I'm not saying we got to go back to making Barbie dolls or making toothbrushes or hell, making pens. I'm not saying we got to go back to doing this kind of dumb stuff. But what I am saying is there's some consequential things to our growth, our national security, our energy needs, our production needs that we can and should build here, and not relying on an adversary, because again, some analysts predict we might find ourselves, Tim, in a conflict with China in about 10 years. If that occurs and we're still so reliant upon them and they say, we're cutting this off, then what? Nobody's thinking about that, but I am.
I watched this segment. I was like, wow, yeah, this is real life. This is what's going on. We got to look down the road, man. We can't just be focused on what's in front of us. Now
no, we can't. And we can protect our businesses along the way. And so I share Mr. Bill Cooper's, stress and worry about, can his business survive this? And he's not the only one. And I'm not saying it's just because he's Black. There are a lot of white small business owners out there, Hispanic small business, Asian, whatever ethnicity you can think of. There are people out there who are legitimately worried. And there are ways that I believe the government can protect those businesses. Look, I'm a conservative. I'm usually reluctant for government to step in this way. But I think under the circumstances of what we're trying to accomplish here, to sort of reusher or rebalance some of the trade deficits and decrease our reliance on adversaries such as China, the government is going to have to step in on a temporary basis to provide that security for our small businesses until these new deals are done. And I'm hoping that'll be this year. But again, this year is still uncertainty for people. So let's shore up that uncertainty. I think Republicans can do that, and we should. And by the way, it would be politically smart if they did so.
They're still talking about Kamala Harris and her loss and still doing an autopsy. I ran across this clip of Frank Lutz. He put it better.
I know Dr. Lutz.
Yeah, brother, he put it in a way. Let me just run it, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side.
Yeah, go ahead.
On deck with Tim Black.
On that night, she won the election. Why did Trump win by such a big margin? It wasn't even that, for modern days, it wasn't that close. Why did he win Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and other states and Arizona? He won them because people thought he said what he meant and meant what he said. And while they didn't like how he articulated it, which is exactly what's happening right now, they wanted that agenda. Why did she lose when she had the election? She had more money than God, had an amazing debate performance that everyone saw. There was never another debate. She'd gone into the lead there. Why did she lose? She lost because of herself. In the end, it's not just what's going on around you. You have to tell people what you're for. You have to tell them what you will do. And you have to be able to show that you can get it done. I remember what a big deal it was when she was made the immigration czar. I was around. I saw this. And then during the campaign, she tries to run away from it. Oh, I wasn't important. I had nothing to do. Own it. Be sincere with people. Let them see you. Acknowledge, as I'm doing right here, right now. I got that election wrong. I knew Trump was going to win 2 weeks before, but I knew he was going to lose after that debate because no one had ever recovered from such a bad debate performance. Governor, the public deserves the truth. The public deserves candor. They have the right to know when we got it wrong. And if you can't admit you got it wrong, then you probably don't deserve to have your position. And they need to know what you're going to do so you don't get it wrong in the future.
Bam.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Not wrong.
I never believed the vice president was going to win.
Yeah.
I always tried to be respectful of her on air, even in my critique of her, because I understand the uniqueness of what she was trying to do. And it's never easy when you're the first person trying to do something. I don't care whether I agree with your politics or not. I'm a smart guy. I can understand like this shit ain't easy. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I work in politics. I absolutely get it. But I never believed she could win. I remember when she had her candidacy before. She didn't win a single state. Hell, I think she dropped out before a single vote was even cast, if I recall correctly. Yeah. There were some faults that she never quite overcame, in my opinion, Tim, as someone who worked on a lot of campaigns. I thought she never came across as authentic. And people say, oh, it's because of race and gender. I don't agree with that necessarily because she got way more votes than Hillary Clinton did. And that's a white woman. Just being honest. She got a lot of white votes, a lot of male votes, a lot of rich people votes, a lot of middle class people, a lot of poor people. A lot of people voted for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris got more votes than even Donald Trump got the first time around. Yeah. So to pretend that this mixed race woman of color didn't do well or didn't win solely because of her race is just nonsense. The facts, the data says otherwise. The data says she did perform very well when you compare her to a whole lot of other people, including a lot of white ones.
Yep.
But she lacked the authenticity that a lot of people were yearning for. She refused to detach herself from Joe Biden. She refused to stand firm on immigration. A lot of the cultural gender stuff, a lot of people thought was too far. That's not to say that people are against anybody, but it is to say that people say, but there's some standards that we just shouldn't really get rid of. Yeah. And I think it's okay for people to feel that way, if I'm being honest with you. She never wanted to own that. And so for an average voter, you're looking at her and you're saying, I don't know what she believes. I don't even know if she's capable of doing anything because anytime she's asked about what she did do, she's running away from it instead of owning it, as Frank Luntz certainly said. So it's like, at least with Trump, I know him. I remember the economy being pretty strong the first time around. So you know what? I'm going to go with what I know. That doesn't mean I really like how braggadocious or brash he can be at times. That doesn't mean I like every crazy thing he's posting, but I do remember what it was like before COVID with him. I think I'm going to go back and take my chances with that over her. And that's what I think the vast majority of people did. But that's not to say that she did not perform well, all things considered, when compared to Hillary Clinton and compared to a litany of others. The woman got a lot of votes, man. And people got to stop saying like, oh, she didn't win because she was black or mixed race or because she was a woman. Like, maybe there are some people like, I just want to vote for a woman. I'm sure of that. And there are some people who probably said, I'm not going to vote for her because she's mixed race. I'm sure there's always going to be those idiots out there, right? We can't pretend that those people don't exist. But to singularly say that alone is the reason she lost is just nonsense when the woman got a ton of, I mean, dude, she makes Hillary Clinton look like she was running for a high school president and not the president of the country, because she did do so well, man, in terms of her vote count. So, Tim, why are we ignoring that as if the woman didn't perform well? It just wasn't enough to win. And that is okay to say that you just didn't win. But damn, girl, you actually did your thing, especially when you look at the white woman who ran, or hell, look at all the other white presidents who did actually win. Look at what Trump did. You did better than him. Why don't we ever acknowledge that, Tim? We should. And you can say that while still saying, but you didn't win for X, Y, and Z reason.
Wow.
We can be honest and candid about it, bro.
Bro, that is the first time I heard someone articulate that argument, because I hadn't considered that. You're right. She did do better than most others in this, contemporary times. Actually, I can't think of, wow. She got
a lot of votes.
A lot more votes than Romney.
I'm saying, bro. Yeah. These are white people. So again, we shouldn't ignore that. We can acknowledge the successes that she did have, while still saying, look, your policies suck. You didn't run a damn good campaign. You weren't a good candidate. We can say all of that while saying, but you did get a lot of damn votes. And we're going to re-acknowledge that. And we applaud you for it, but we gotta get away from just trying to point to this one or two singular things and saying, well, she didn't win because of that. I don't agree with that, man. Woman got more votes than Romney, more votes than John McCain, more votes than Hillary Clinton, more votes than Donald Trump. The first time, more votes than Donald Trump. The second time, Trump just increased from both of his first two terms. So again, you gotta really put this stuff in its proper concrete context, numerically speaking. And when you do that and you get away from the hyperbolic rhetoric and the emotionalism that we often tie to our politics, which I get why we do, when you set that aside and just look at the raw facts and you say, well, she actually did really, really well. It wasn't enough for her to win, but we can acknowledge, she did okay. She didn't do too bad, just didn't win. And to the victor goes the spoils, and that happens to be Trump.
That's it, man. What do you think it is about Trump that has helped that he's won his primary 3 times in a row? That hasn't happened since FDR, man. That's amazing. Yeah. He won 4 times.
Unprecedented. Yeah. Look, man. I think it's a part of the authentic nature of Trump. It's a part of whether you like him or whether you like him or dislike him, love him or hate him. You know what you're getting with him. You're not kind of wondering or predicting if what he's saying is true, because this guy is telling us what he really feels, unlike most politicians. And I really think you're seeing people move away from this cookie cutter creation of a politician. There's a song. Do you remember the show called Weeds that used to be on, I think, HBO?
I do.
There was a song by a woman named, I think it was Marvina Reynolds, something like that. Maybe it was Marvina Reynolds. You guys can Google it. And it's called Little Boxes. It's the song, Tim, that plays at the top of the show.
Theme song,
and
right.
She says, little boxes, they all come out the same. People are tired of politicians that are manufactured, produced in Washington, coming out the same. And Trump is really an aberration to all of that. And I think I really believe at the core, that's why he does so well, is because people have said we've brought into so long the cookie cutter politician. The little boxes that come out the same, green ones, yellow ones are all the same. That's the song, by the way, if you guys are wondering what I'm kind of referencing to. People are saying we've tried this for so long and things have gotten worse. The wealth disparities in the country have gotten worse. My party's to blame for a little bit of that too. I got to be candid with your audience. I got to be real here. People are struggling. Our kids are falling behind academically. China's outpacing us there. I mean, there are a lot of areas of stress in the United States. And I don't mean on a person, but I mean in terms of industry that we absolutely need to improve. And so when people say, well, these wonderful politicians who went to great schools, they speak very well, they have all of this quote unquote experience, none of them have fixed any of this. In fact, a lot of them were the cause of it. We're going to try something a little different because this just hasn't worked for decades now. And people are trying again with Trump. And if Trump is a little bit successful, then people will feel good about it. If he's not successful at all by 4 years, then they'll say, well, shit, we're going to try something else in 2028.
Yeah.
But I think the cookie cutter presidential candidate or politician days are over. People want something that is a unique, but that really speaks to their sensibilities of their pain, their struggle, their experiences, and what they're seeing. People remember where things were easier. Get a good job, makes good money, you can buy your house, put your kids through school or get them a trade, whatever the case may be. It all was well. People don't feel like that anymore, man. And they're not wrong to not feel that way, because the data suggests that that isn't the case. And if you're a part of our community, then the economics are even worse. It doesn't make any sense for us to be going backwards. John Hope Bryant, I watch a lot of his talks on economics. I have a lot of love and respect for that brother. And he's always talking about economics. And he said, I think by 2030 or maybe 2050, I think 2050, not 2030, 2050, that the average Black net worth will be $0.
Yep.
We're going backwards. We're not progressing at all. Our young men, our young women are starting to do really, really well. So shout out to the Black women, but our brothers aren't doing well, man.
Yeah.
They're not doing well at all. And that really, really, really worries the hell out of me, Tim, because that's something that I think should be a national emergency and crisis. Not just our young men, but young men across the board aren't doing well. And so people are looking at these realities and they're saying these people promised this would get better, and it hasn't gotten better. They just blatantly lied. Only them and their rich friends have gotten better, and their kids are getting to good schools, and they're passing on the wealth. But we're not passing on any damn thing but debt. So we're going to try something a little different. And here they are to Trump. So for people who oppose Trump, whether you're like a never Trumper or a Democrat, they don't understand that constantly bashing Trump does not provide a solution to the critique that people are asking and yearning for. Yeah. And until they do that, they will never see any long-term gains, because they're not actually solving the problem at all. They're just saying this guy is bad. Okay, some of the people who vote for him, they know he's not the greatest guy in the world, but they also know he's not you. You've made a bunch of promises that you never delivered on. And that's what I think I think that's a part of the conundrum that they just don't quite understand. So that's why I think Trump has done so well. That's why he continues to maintain his support. And that's also why you're seeing, more people of color, 40% Latinos, about 1% more Black people writ large. When you break it down to individual states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Texas, you see a significant increase of Black men actually supporting Trump when you go to certain individual states. And so when you ask yourselves why, to the audience, I would say it's because people want something different. It doesn't mean that people think Trump is some great savior. He's the next coming of Christ. Maybe some people believe that. I don't think that's what most people believe, though. I just think they want someone who is completely disruptive to this machine that promised everybody would rise to the top, when in fact only their friends and them rose to the top, while everybody else got shoved further down the bottom. That's what I think, Tim.
Yeah, and Kamala kind of continued that with her candidacy, but put a lot of money in the pockets of her friends, and a lot of celebrities got an opportunity to make some money and come out and perform, but wasn't that much focus on what she was going to do for the country. So I think that's part of.
She'll run for governor of California, I think, and if she does, she might win. I think she could win that. But in terms of her running for president, I don't think that'll ever happen.
I mean, you know what, dog? That's still fantastic. I mean, God. How many, mixed women or women governors or look, she's had an incredible run. People make like attorney general, vice president, like these are not regular jobs. Like, she killed it. Like on
And again, as I just said, look at vote count.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem. Game recognizes game. I'm gonna give her props for what she did. It just wasn't enough to win. Someone has to lose. Someone has to win. That's the nature of our political system.
That's the way it is, man. That's the way it is.
In general.
So you ran into a buzzsaw.
Like you said, that's the way it is. That's just the way it is.
So
in the words of Bruce Hornsby and Tupac Shakur, that's just the way it is.
That's the way it is. Man, tell people about your business, Shermichael. I mean, you give advice to politicians, right?
So I don't do that much anymore, Tim. So okay, every once in a while people will call. Like I actually got a couple lunches coming up with some Republican staffers that are part of leadership. We're going to do a little roundtable thing. I'll give some advice on some things because I think they need to start prioritizing some entrepreneur stuff for Black men. Again, that's really, really important to me. So if I can sort of use my influence to try to move the needle or bridge some understanding there, then I'm going to certainly do that. So I got that coming up in about a week or two. So I still do those sorts of things, but my primary business is no longer consulting. I clearly do TV, but my main business now, my main two businesses, I have one business called Guns Out TV. That's my firearms sort of production thing. And we do like gun reviews for manufacturers. We've done documentaries for manufacturers like Daniel Defense, SIG, and a bunch of others. And we've done really, really well with that business. And then our new venture, which is a startup, which is Guns Out Network, We the Free. So you guys check that out, WTF.TV. Again, WTF.TV, like what the F. We wanted to do a play on words as guys. You know, we like to have fun sometimes. But We the Free.TV is a streaming platform that's about firearms, First Amendment, and action-oriented content. Those three things. So by firearms is training and firearms related content that could be entertaining in nature. Political commentary, so that could be podcast on culture and politics. I have a program that I've mentioned several times in our discussion that really sort of analyzes politics. And then we have some podcasts that just talks about, again, culture more broadly speaking. That's there. And then also, again, we have action-oriented content. We got a couple movies on the network, some documentaries on the network. So it's a network that's sort of geared towards men, but we also got some space for women too. We actually just brought on a woman. Her content is going to be populated. I think this week we're going to do more to start bringing on women to the network as well, because that's, again, a growing and large base of the firearms community. But if you're a center right-leaning person, or maybe you sort of have some conservative values, or maybe you like the political stuff isn't your thing, but you really like guns, then our network is a place for you. $8.99 a month. It's a super low barrier of entry. And if you just only like the politics, then that's just $1 a month. So we wanted to be understanding of where people are economically speaking, but we also wanted to make sure we make a profit, because the business is in the business of making a profit. So we were able to try to meet margins that are good for us, but also good for the consumer to say, okay, I can actually afford to enjoy this. So I'd advise your audience, hey, if you're interested, come check it out. Hell, Tim, maybe you want to start putting your videos on We the Free, bro. I'm not opposed to it. Just letting you know.
Wow, man. I appreciate the offer, my brother. Yeah, man. Amazing. WeTheFreeTV.com.
Well, bro, we my business partner John, another brother, we're both from Louisiana. We had started working on the idea of starting our own network probably 2-3 years ago, and just going through the constant talks and trying to get funding for it. And then the end of last year, we got an investor, gave us a multi-million-dollar investment to build the network. Not an easy thing for an entrepreneur in general. It's even harder when you're a Black entrepreneur. So we were very proud of being able to accomplish that goal. But now it's like, all right, we got the investment. We spent some capital trying to lay the foundation, meeting those major milestones. Now it's time to start bringing in revenue by getting individuals to subscribe to the network. And so right now, our big push is bringing people on to the network to subscribe and continuing to grow.
Well, look, man, definitely. Look, man, I wish you the best of that endeavor, man. And, you, man. Bro, man, what is, God, I don't know what to say. What can we do? Like, what can you, what advice would you give somebody that's trying to do the same thing? I'm trying to give value to these people. Yeah. And they're listening to you. They say, wow, Shermichael's got it going on. He's doing some amazing things. How did you make that pivot from what you were doing with political analyzing to starting your own network, brother?
Bro, relationships are everything. It's, being smart certainly helps. Not gonna lie about that. And that doesn't mean you got to go to college, but being smart, being studious, being aware, reading a lot, that helps a lot, right? Because it helps you navigate things. It helps you when you're in conversations about complicated things. When someone's trying to pull a wool over your eyes. So that's really important. You got to understand business. That matters. But that alone won't get someone to cut a multi-million-dollar check. It's all about the relationships. I mean, I just can't stress that enough, man. When you look at other groups, it's not that they're smarter than us. It's not that they're more talented than us. They have the relationships. We got to get into the rooms. And that's why I said, man, it's oftentimes, it's not because we lack the desire to do well. When I look at some of our folks in the inner city, it's just people just don't know, like, oh, I really should be prioritizing this. I really should be going to this thing and trying to get myself in that door by hell or high water. We just don't have the knowledge to know that. But it was just relationships, Tim. And I'm not saying, let me not say that it wasn't a lot of work starting a business, getting lawyers involved and doing a business plan and a pro forma and looking at projections. And there's a lot of complicated stuff you got to go through before somebody wires you millions of dollars. I'm not going to pretend that right. Doesn't exist. But the point I'm trying to say, it was the relationships that even got us to the table to have those conversations. And then it was the respect for the intellect once at the table that helped. This is a no-brainer. Yeah. So that's the quick version of the advice I would give to people who are saying, well, I want to do this. How do I do it? And I would also say quickly, like I said, it took us 3 years to get to that point. Be willing to sacrifice. Yeah. My business partner, John, he always says this about me. He's like, Sherm, you're one of the few people I know who will literally suffer through hell if it means you're going to get what you want. Most of my friends would tell you that about me. I will literally suffer and do something that I don't want to do in terms of work because I'm constantly thinking, I know if I can just make it through another year, another 2, I will be in a position to do this. A lot of people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really important, Tim, because there are going to be moments in your business where capital, maybe dries up a little bit, or you got to make tough decisions, or you're like, man, we spent too much here. We got to slow down because we got to, grow that. All of these things are going to happen. You need to be a person with the wherewithal, as my grandfather would say, to be able to suffer a little bit, to see it through when the heat gets, or when the heat's turned up on you, or when shit hits the fan. And the only way you can really do that, in my opinion, is before you get the good thing, be willing to kind of go through some things leading up to it. And a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. Some people, this is just too hard. I don't want to suffer through this. I don't want to have to work this thing to gain this skill, or work this thing because I'm trying to get proximity, not to the person who hired me, but to their boss. Most people aren't thinking about that. And most people aren't willing to do that. But if you can do all of those things, maintain relationships, prioritize just constantly learning as much as you can never go wrong there, then you're already going to be ahead of everybody else. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to automatically yield to some magical success. I'm not saying that at all. Right. But what I am saying, it gives you a leg up on what most people are willing to do. At least that's the way I see it. And some people probably have their own little, magical, right. I don't know, magical potion, if you will, for all the little things they added to get them to where they are. But that to me is sort of like a reduced way, a quick way of saying that's how we sort of got to this point. A lot of hard work, being studious, but again, the relationships, because there are a lot of people who do work hard and never make it. And oftentimes they never make it because they didn't have the right relationship. And so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that doesn't matter, because it absolutely does.
And I appreciate your candor, brother. Being honest, because I do realize it. I'm from DC, and I've worked in government contracting before I did this. And yeah, I understand how relationships work, man. Having that network, and
sometimes, Tim, you'll see people who are the dumbest effing people. I'm not even gonna say dumbest effing people. Yeah. You're like, how this motherfucker get this Negro ain't deserve, but he had the relationship.
Yep.
You realize, like, this motherfucker had the relationship. That's how he got it. It wasn't because he was smart. It wasn't because his ass had some creative, brilliant ass idea. This mother just knew the person who approved it. Yeah. To your point about government contracts, or to business in general, when people start these ideas and they get startups these startups get this money, and you're like, well, wow, so-and-so had a similar idea, but they couldn't get the money. It wasn't because so-and-so wasn't creative, wasn't as hardworking, or working harder than that person. Relationships, man, matter so much. And that's why I always tell people, you got to maintain those relationships, because you just never know how that may be of benefit to you, or how it will bear fruit in the long run.
Man,
work hard, but don't underestimate the power of damn good relationships, man. And like you said, Tim, government contracts is a damn good example of how knowing the person, if your case off, you got a good relationship with that case officer, that middle person, you know what I'm talking about, Tim. And they can really, man, that makes a big difference. My godmother is in government contracting, and we talk about it all the time. Having those relationships, man, that could make the difference of you getting that $10 million government contract, or it going to somebody else who might be mediocre compared to your work output, but they knew the right person.
That's it. That's part of the reason why Shermichael Singleton's on this show, man, is that reaching out, talking to different people. That's what I'm trying to do. I learned my lesson, man. Don't be in a silo. A lot of people want to bring on Shermichael, like, oh no, he's a conservative. I'm like, I'm just me. I don't even want a name tag.
Tim, I talk to anybody, bro. I'm willing to talk to anybody, and I don't go into any conversation with arrogance. I don't go into any conversation thinking I know it all, that I'm better than anybody. I just go into it and say, hey, let's just talk. And I hope I've dropped some nuggets that you're like, damn, that was actually interesting. I can gain something from that. And I hope that as I'm listening, I'm like, I've been writing stuff. I got my little notes here, and you've been saying different things, Tim. I've been writing stuff down because I'm also always looking for opportunity to learn myself. I don't go into anything, man, thinking that this person should be honored that I'm on. Who the hell am I? I'm just one guy right now who is trying to do some good things to, progress for my family and to hopefully add some value to the people I care about, my friends, and to be able to do good things in the community. But that doesn't make me any special than anybody else. So, some people probably wouldn't want to have me on. I don't give a fuck. That's their problem.
Right.
That's their problem. But hey, the people who do have me on, I'm grateful for it because it gives me an opportunity to be in front of a new audience. And maybe people get to see me a little different. And it also gives me an opportunity to be challenged on things. I'm for being challenged. That's important to me because I believe that old aphorism my granddad still says is iron sharpens iron. I can't get better if nobody's pushing me to think about things, right? In real time. Or like I said, I made all these different notes from our talk. And I know this weekend I'm gonna be researching a couple of different things and I'm gonna be thinking about some of the things you said. So when I have a conversation with somebody else, I have a broader perspective on things. Now, like that's the kind of guy I am, bro. And that's the way I approach every conversation with everybody. Even if I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna agree on everything, but I'm open because maybe I can learn something.
Well, man, I learned something, man. But I already knew because I could tell that your composure beneath that, there was a brother that was going to give me some straight talk, man. I knew that. So when people were saying, oh, Tim, I don't know about he's seeing this way, I'm like, I think you're judging him based on some other brothers or some other conservative. You know what I'm saying? They kind of lump people together. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was like, nah. I think
my thing is, man, look, people, and I said this. There are different types of Black conservatives, and I get that, and I get why, people will say, like I see this, like, oh, they must be paying you a lot of money. Like, well, the only person that pays me is CNN. I pay myself because I own my companies, so I get paid by CNN, and if CNN decided they didn't want me anymore, I will be fine. But no one's paying me, so when I see that, I'm like, yo, you think I'm so and so? I don't get any money from them, and I don't want any money from whether it's this particular person or that. I'm good. I like being independent because when I'm independent, then I can say shit that other people can't really say. So I always kind of find the humor in that. And I had a Black radio host. I'm not going to say who he is, interviewed me once. And he said, this is his first time interviewing me. And he's like, people will always sound like, oh, he must be on the payroll for this, that. He said, I did my research on you, asked a lot of people in politics about you. And this was a brother, and he definitely doesn't see politics my way. He said, everybody I talked to always said, oh yeah, Shermichael was always doing his own thing. He always was an entrepreneur, always doing his own business stuff. He's never worked for this person. He's just never been that person. He's like, I had a lot of respect for you when I found that out because I had just assumed. And I said, bro, it's okay because I'm a person. I assume shit too until you talk to people or you find out otherwise. It's human nature to just assume. So I don't ever take it personal when people say like, oh, well, I assumed this about you. It's like, well, fuck, man, just have a conversation with me and see what the hell I'm about before you just assume, please. And then make your opinion about me. And if you still say, I don't fuck with Shermichael, then I'm cool with it because at least you found out for yourself first. Right. But at least have the conversation and give me an opportunity to tell you who I am before you just assume because you saw a 5-minute sound bite or because I'm a conservative, you just think, oh, then they're all sort of the same. Nobody's all the same. Right. I don't think that about people on the other side. So why I think that about me? So I appreciate you, Tim, for having me on the show, bro. I really do.
No doubt, man. People, where do they go, man? To WeTheFree.com? Is that where they go?
You can go to WeTheFree.com or WTF.tv and go check us out, man. And I would love to have your audience, check us out. We got a lot of cool content on the network, a lot of cool gun stuff. We got a show right now that's doing really well called Pimp My Pew, which is a play on Pimp My Ride. So the host of this show, he customizes, or he doesn't customize it. A bunch of gun people customize people's guns. And so the show comes out every Wednesday. On this past Wednesday, we had a brother who was on, a 20-year Army veteran. I think the brother was from Pennsylvania, and now he's an accountant, and he had his gun customized. And so that was really cool. So we have people from all different walks of life. And so, hey, if you can spare $1 a month for the politics, join us. If you can spare $8.99, $9 a month, then hey, we'd love to have you there. We try to have something a little bit for everybody. And look, we're only as good as the people who support us. And gun owners are not just white people. There are a lot of black gun owners and gun owners that are Latino and gun owners of color. Yeah. And so we would be honored to have people in our community a part of the network, because that's important to us as well. We want a network for everybody, not just one type of person.
I got one thing. You said politics is $1 and guns is $8.
Yeah.
Politics is that bad off, bro?
Well, so the reason, so I'll just explain, Tim, why we did it this way, just from a business structure. That's a good question. It's cheaper for us to produce the political content than the firearms content. Like the firearms content is really, really, really expensive to produce. I mean, that higher value content, because we got to have a slew of camera guys, a ton of editors. We got to really pay the talent a higher fee for that type, because it just takes so much. It's cumbersome work. So obviously we need to, every subscriber we bring on, there needs to be not only a customer acquisition, but we need to be able to say we need X number of subscribers to pay for this show in terms of either breaking even or having a surplus. And so that's why you're going to see the higher value tied to the gun shows versus the political shows that are a little bit cheaper.
Gotcha.
A little bit of business.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, we doing political content right now. And it's costing nothing, basically.
Yep. Right, it's cheap for us to do. But Tim, seriously, bro, if you're looking for an additional space to have your content, we'd be open to having your content on the network. And I know so for people who don't know this, if you're creating content on YouTube, creators get money from advertisement from YouTube. For a lot of people, that's no longer a lot of money anymore. So a lot of guys have a Patreon, or when people join Patreon gets 1%, and then the rest goes to the subscriber. On our network, we're doing an affiliate program where we say, hey, here's a unique link. Every person who subscribes, whether it's the $1 or the $8.99 or annual, because we also have annual, then you will get 30% of that. So we're also trying to have a creative way for people to still make money while putting their content on the network. So Tim, if you want to come on, brother, we'll be happy to bring you on, have that 30% rev share with you as just another distribution channel for your content. We'd love to have you. Just let us know.
Man, I appreciate the offer, brother. I'm definitely going to look into it, man. And damn, brother, I didn't know I was going to get the hookup, man. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you, Tim, man. I appreciate you, bro. And thank you, man, for just always sort of, being fair to me, showing me love. I always read, when you talk about me or share one of my clips. I actually do go read through the comments too. And sometimes I think they're sort of hilarious. I think I have replied a couple of times in the past. But again, I just want to say I appreciate it, because it's easy to take a person out of context. It's easy to take something and just quickly assign judgment. And I have found you to always try to be fair to me. And in all sincerity, man, I really do appreciate that. And I just want to say that on camera in front of your audience.
Man, that's dope, man. Thank you, my brother. And you just keep doing what you're doing, man. We got your back, brother.
Thank you, man. I'm definitely trying, Tim. Hopefully I can be a good example to somebody out there. That's the hope.
Perfect. You made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you. Now, Google thinks this next video is going to be perfect for you. It's right up your alley. So click the next video, watch that with me, and let's keep this politics going. You're built for this.